I almost fell out of my chair when my office phone rang and a woman's voice I didn't recognize said, "Your wife is screwing my father. And trust me, it's not about love. She's aiming for his will." My stomach dropped like I'd been kicked off a cliff. The world around me, the methodical clicking of keyboards, the distant hum of the copy machine, the antiseptic smell of my corner office, all of it faded to white noise. The phone receiver turned slick in my palm. "Who the hell is this?" I managed, my voice dropping to a whisper that wouldn't carry past my half-closed door. The last thing I needed was Janet from accounting hearing this shit. Office gossip traveled faster than herpes in a college dorm. "Michelle Lawson," the voice replied, cool as a morgue drawer. "My father is Walter Lawson. Does that name ring any bells?" It did. Walter Lawson was the retired hedge fund manager my wife had mentioned meeting at some charity gala 3 months ago. Cultural patronage, she'd called it. Christ. The only culture involved was the kind growing in the petri dish of lies our marriage had become. "How do you," I started, but Michelle cut me off. "I have pictures. Videos. Text messages. Voice messages where your wife specifically talks about how she's going to secure her future once the old man kicks it." Her words, not mine. There was a bitter edge to Michelle's voice, the sound of someone who'd been drinking from the same poisoned well I was about to sample. "She thinks I don't know." "They both do." I gripped the phone tighter, barely breathing. My free hand curled into a fist so tight my wedding ring bit into my flesh. 5 years of marriage. 5 fucking years of "I love you" and "we're in this together" and "I'd never hurt you, baby." All washed down the drain like yesterday's vomit. I'd known something was off. The late nights. The new clothes. The sudden interest in investment banking and estate planning. I'd chalked it up to a midlife crisis or boredom. Maybe even depression. I'd even suggested therapy, for Christ's sake. Meanwhile, she was playing me for the world's biggest sucker. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already knew. Betrayal creates strange bedfellows. "Because she's 29, and my father is 72 with a heart condition and more money than God," Michelle said flatly. "And because I'm his only child, or at least I was until your wife started whispering in his ear about starting fresh and leaving the past behind. Now he's talking about changing his will. Cutting me out. Bringing in new blood." I closed my eyes and saw red. My wife, Rebecca, with her practiced innocent smile, her calculated laugh that she used like a weapon. The way she could make anyone believe she was exactly what they needed. It's what had drawn me to her in the first place. What a fucking joke. "Let's meet," Michelle continued, her voice hardening with resolve. "I think we can help each other ruin their little fairy tale." I agreed before she even finished talking. Some decisions don't require thought. Some betrayals cut too deep for caution. "Café Noir, on 5th and Main. 8 o'clock tonight," she said. "Come alone. And don't breathe a word to your wife." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at nothing, the dial tone buzzing in my ear like an angry wasp. The rage building inside me was so pure, so clarifying, that it almost felt like calm. The kind of calm that precedes violence. I spent the rest of the workday on autopilot. Signed papers. Answered emails. Nodded through a budget meeting while fantasies of confrontation played behind my eyes like a snuff film. I wanted to call Rebecca, to hear her voice, to see if I could detect the lies beneath her "I love yous," now that I knew what to listen for. But Michelle's warning rang in my ears. "Don't breathe a word." So I didn't. I texted Rebecca that I had a late meeting. She replied with a heart emoji and "Don't work too hard, babe." The casual endearment felt like battery acid on my skin. Café Noir was one of those places designed to look European without the inconvenience of actually being in Europe. Dim lighting, exposed brick, overpriced coffee. The kind of place where affairs begin and end with equal frequency. I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a whiskey neat. When it came, I threw it back in one burning gulp and ordered another. Michelle arrived precisely at 8, and I knew her immediately. She had dark hair cut in a severe bob, eyes like flint, and the razor-sharp posture of someone who'd been told since birth that weakness was unacceptable. She wore a charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment and carried herself like someone who knew exactly how much power she wielded. "Ian Morris?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from me without waiting for an answer. I nodded. Up close, I could see the strain around her eyes, the tightness in her jaw. She wasn't just angry, she was seething with a cold, methodical rage I could respect. This wasn't some spoiled princess throwing a tantrum over daddy's new girlfriend. This was someone who'd been fundamentally betrayed by the two people who should have been most loyal. "Show me," I said. Without a word, she pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and passed it to me. The first photo hit me like a sucker punch. Rebecca, my wife, all smiles, clinging to a frail old man like a gold-digging leech. His arm was around her waist, his weathered hand resting possessively on her hip. They were at what looked like a private yacht club, the kind of place where membership costs more than most people's annual salary. I swiped left. Another photo. Rebecca whispering in Walter's ear, her lips nearly touching his skin, her hand on his chest. His expression was that of a man half his age, rejuvenated by attention he should have been smart enough to recognize as predatory. "When?" I managed. "That was 3 weeks ago," Michelle said, her voice clinical. "I have more. Much more." She wasn't lying. Photo after photo showed Rebecca worming her way into Walter's life. At restaurants, at private showings, at his estate. Always touching. Always whispering. Always playing the adoring companion. "She told me she was at a work retreat that weekend," I said, my voice hollow. "Said they had no cell service." Michelle's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Meanwhile, she was helping my father pick out a new sports car. One she'll probably inherit when he drops dead." The last photo was the worst. Rebecca and Walter, kissing. Not some chaste peck, but deep and consuming, her body pressed against his frail frame like she was trying to devour what little life he had left. Her hands were in his thinning hair, her eyes closed in a pantomime of passion that made my stomach turn. "I have videos too," Michelle said, watching my face with a detached curiosity that reminded me of a scientist observing a lab rat. "But I think that's enough emotional trauma for one sitting, don't you?" I handed the phone back, my hand steadier than I expected. The rage had crystallized into something harder, colder. Something with edges. "She's been doing this for months," Michelle continued, slipping the phone back into her purse. "At first, I thought it was just a fling. Disgusting, but ultimately harmless. My father's had younger women before." She paused, took a sip of the martini she'd ordered while I was lost in the photos. "But this is different. She's playing the long game. Making him fall in love with her. Isolating him from me, from his old friends. And now he's talking about changing his will. What do you want from me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I want her gone," Michelle said simply. "Out of his life. Out of his will. Preferably out of this city." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. "And I think you want the same thing." She was right. I'd never considered myself a vengeful person. Before today, I might have said I believed in second chances, in forgiveness. But that was before I saw my wife with her tongue down the throat of a man old enough to be her grandfather, plotting to steal his fortune. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Michelle had been tracking them for weeks. She knew their routines, their meeting spots, their plans. She had access to her father's financial information, his legal documents. She'd been building a case, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike. We spent hours plotting, every idea nastier than the last. The cafe emptied around us, the staff shooting irritated glances as they wiped down tables and stacked chairs. But we didn't care. We were surgery, cutting away the diseased tissue of betrayal. We need to hit her where it hurts, I said, on my fourth whiskey. Money. Status. Security. And we need to make my father see her for what she really is, Michelle added. A predator. And then the plan finally came together, and it was perfect. Elegant in its simplicity. Devastating in its impact. Michelle had her father sign a new will, one he thought was just a routine update. But the document he signed stripped him of control, transferring his estate to Michelle effective immediately under a protection clause that her father's own lawyer had suggested years ago when Walter had started showing signs of cognitive decline. It was meant to be a safety net, a way to protect the family fortune if Walter became incapable of managing it himself. He'll be furious when he finds out, Michelle acknowledged, her face a mask of cold determination. But by then, it will be too late. And once he sees what Rebecca's really after, he'll understand why I had to do it. Meanwhile, I played my part. I made sure Rebecca knew I was planning to leave her, that my business was going bankrupt, that there wouldn't be a penny left by the time she tried to cash out. I let slip mention of offshore accounts, of debts I couldn't pay, of creditors circling like vultures. You're sure you can pull this off? Michelle asked, skepticism edging her voice. She'll believe you. Trust me, I replied, a bitter smile twisting my lips. Rebecca's great at lying, but she's shit at spotting lies. Besides, she's too busy planning her future with your father to pay attention to what I'm doing. I was right. Desperate and greedy, Rebecca pushed harder into Walter's life, trying to secure her golden ticket. She started spending nights at his estate, coming home only to shower and change clothes. She talked about helping Walter with his finances and organizing his affairs. She even had the nerve to suggest that I might benefit from her new connections once I got my business back on track. Every word out of her mouth was further confirmation that Michelle had been right. This wasn't about love. This was about money, pure and simple. And now Rebecca was scrambling to lock it down before it slipped through her fingers. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. The opportunity came 3 weeks later. Walter was hosting a gala at his estate, a charity function for some disease neither he nor anyone else at the party actually cared about. It was just an excuse for the wealthy to wear expensive clothes and congratulate themselves on their generosity while drinking champagne that cost more than most people's rent. I wasn't invited, of course. Rebecca had made sure of that. It's just too awkward with everything going on, she'd said, not even bothering to hide her relief when I agreed without argument. But Michelle was there. Dressed to kill in a black gown that screamed old money, she circulated through the crowd like a shark smelling blood in the water. She bided her time, waiting until everyone who mattered was present, until the alcohol had loosened tongues and lowered guards. And then, just when Rebecca thought she had everything lined up, when she was hanging on Walter's arm, playing the devoted companion, already mentally spending his money, the hammer dropped. Michelle stood up, clinked her glass for attention, and revealed everything. The secret meetings. The manipulative text messages. The plans Rebecca had shared about what she'd do with Walter's money once the old man was gone. Michelle had recordings, conversations Rebecca thought were private, confessions made in unguarded moments when she thought she was talking to a friend. In reality, she'd been talking to one of Michelle's longtime friends, someone who'd been only too happy to help trap the woman trying to steal the Lawson fortune. Her future husband disowned her, publicly. Michelle stood right there, cool as ice, while the old man screamed about betrayal and manipulation. Walter, faced with undeniable evidence of Rebecca's true intentions, turned on her with all the fury of a man who realizes he's been played for a fool. Rebecca tried to deny it, of course. Tried to paint Michelle as the jealous daughter, tried to cling to the fantasy she'd created. But the evidence was too damning, the case too airtight. And when Walter learned about the attempt to change his will, an attempt that had backfired spectacularly, his rage reached new heights. My wife was thrown out of his house like garbage. Literally escorted off the property by security, her protests falling on deaf ears as the elite of the city watched with thinly veiled delight at the unfolding scandal. There's nothing the wealthy enjoy more than watching one of their own, even a temporary one, fall from grace. No inheritance. No money. No backup plan. I filed for divorce the next morning, citing adultery with full documentation. Thanks to Michelle's evidence and the publicity of the gala incident, it was the easiest divorce in history. Rebecca didn't even contest it. There was no point. Her reputation was in tatters, her schemes exposed, her future prospects reduced to ashes. She tried to come back to our house once, to collect her things. I had changed the locks. Her clothes, her jewelry, her precious mementos, I had them delivered to a cheap motel on the edge of town where she'd been staying. Everything except her wedding ring, which I'd sold to pay for a weekend trip to Vegas. A small pettiness, but sometimes it's the little things that provide the most satisfaction. The last I heard, she'd left town with nothing but the clothes on her back and a destroyed reputation that would follow her like a shadow. No one in our social circle would touch her. No one in Walter's much more exclusive circle would acknowledge her existence. She was persona non grata in a world where connections are everything. As for Walter, he and Michelle reconciled after a fashion. The old man was too proud to fully admit he'd been duped, too stubborn to thank his daughter for saving him from financial ruin. But he didn't fight the new arrangement of his estate, and he stopped talking about cutting Michelle out of his will. Some lessons come at a high price, but they tend to stick. Michelle and I didn't stay in touch after that. We didn't need to. We'd served our purpose for each other, two strangers united briefly by betrayal and revenge, then separated by the completion of our mission. We didn't become friends. We didn't fall in love in some twisted romantic comedy scenario. We were accomplices, nothing more and nothing less. Sometimes I think about reaching out to her. Not out of any lingering attachment, but simply to acknowledge what we achieved together. To mark the anniversary of the day we destroyed the woman who thought she could destroy us. But I never do. Revenge this sweet didn't require a thank you card. It didn't need fond reminiscence or emotional processing. It just needed to be done right, and damn, we did it perfectly. The world moved on. I sold my business, took the money, and started fresh in a new city. Not running away, I had nothing to run from, but simply seeking cleaner air, uncontaminated by memories of betrayal. I don't think about Rebecca often. When I do, it's not with longing or regret or even hatred. Those emotions require investment, and I've closed that account permanently. Instead, I think of her with a kind of clinical detachment, like a scientist recalling a particularly instructive lab experiment. She taught me valuable lessons about trust, about human nature, about the capacity for deception that lies dormant in even the most seemingly loving heart. Expensive lessons, to be sure. But as they say, education is never cheap. And some knowledge can only be purchased with blood. Do I regret what I did? Not for a second. In a world where loyalty is rare and betrayal is common, sometimes the only justice available is the kind you create yourself. Rebecca made her choices. I made mine. We both got exactly what we deserved. And if there's one thing I learned from the whole sordid affair, it's this: revenge isn't a dish best served cold. It's best served exactly how we served it, methodically, brutally, and with absolutely no chance of survival.